Hello and welcome to Sisterhood of the Traveling Paperbacks, a cheerful and irreverent book club podcast all about genre fiction, fandom, and the things that make us happy.
My name is Chelsea.
I'm Claire.
And I'm Kay.
And on this episode, we will be talking about, as always, what we are currently reading. Then we will be talking about our book of the fortnight, which is Not Your Sidekick by C.B. Lee, which was Kay's pick.
Yay.
And then, of course, we will be talking about what we have on the go and coming up in the future. So I guess, Claire, what are you currently reading? What do you have reading on at the moment?
So currently I'm finishing up my reading from the Diversathon that was going on at the end of January. I'm terrible with readathons. I always take forever to read everything on my TBR, but particularly with Diversathon because of the idea of making sure that we read diverse books written by, own voices, authors and whatever. I don't want to just be like, oh, I didn't read them in a week, so I'm not reading them. Especially since I tend to start everything in the week and find it really cool, so I want to continue it. So I'm wrapping up and I'm finishing up On the Edge of Gone by Corinne Drevis and Dreadnought by April Daniels. So the first is this post-apocalyptic sci-fi thing about a girl who's trying to convince this generation ship to take her and her family away from the ruins of Earth, even though they are neurotypical and they have maybe social issues and whatever. They're not the kind of people that are perceived as the most valuable to society, but they're still people, and please don't leave us to die on Earth. And then Dreadnought is this really cool superhero YA novel about a girl who witnesses the death of a superhero and gains all his powers, but the main thing that happens for her is that she is trans and she wasn't out to anybody, but when she gains those superpowers, she her body transforms into what it was always meant to be, and so everybody suddenly sees her as a girl, even though she always knew she was a girl. And, she just wasn't out to anyone, so it's really awkward for her. And I'm really not far into this one, but it's a really interesting experience to read about gender dysphoria in a first-person point of view, because, that's obviously not my experience at all, and it's not something we see that often, so it's really, really fascinating to read about.
Yeah, I have both of those on my future TBR. I'm hoping to get to On the Edge of Gone before the end of Hugo nominations, because I'm thinking about putting it on the ballot. So what about you, Miss Kay? What are you reading?
Let me pull up my list, because everybody knows I can't remember the names of literally anything ever. So I just finished The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, which I had been hearing really good things about it, but then the Smart Bitches Trashy Books, which is one of my favorite go-to book blogs, they do a lot of romance reviews. The review on that said there was some ableist language in it that took them out of it, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to read that. But a friend of mine had an actual final copy versus this reviewer's advanced copy, and none of that made it into the final book. So I read it. It's really good. It's about two high-up executive-level assistants at a publishing company, and it's hate to love, and I'm weak to that. It was really charming and kind of angsty, and I liked it a lot. And then I just finished in the car an hour ago, A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers, which I have been meaning to do forever.
Good choice.
I did not like it as much as The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, but I did like it. I didn't love the viewpoints as much. I think it's still a good book.
That's a high bar to
it's
me,
a really
too.
high
I feel
bar.
like she really knocked it out of the park with that first book. Was a really solid.
Yeah, and it had fewer team feels, which is the thing I really loved about the first book. You still get kind of the found family stuff, but it just didn't work quite. Still good. Didn't work quite as well for me. And then the other one that I'm reading right now, I lied. That I'm reading too many things. I'm still finishing The Telling by Ursula Le Guin, which is another one of the Hainish cycle books, so the same as The Dispossessed. Really liking it. It's really dense. I maybe read 10 pages at a time. It's super heavy even for Ursula. And I'm also reading, it's an advanced copy. I'm pretty sure it comes out in March. I'll be sure to put in the publishing date in our show notes. What It Takes, which is the Kowalski reunion novel. Shannon Stacy's the writer there. Have either of you guys read any of the Kowalski romances? I think this is the 10th, maybe. There's so many of them. I have like 10% of it left. It's super cute. You 100% would not have any idea what was happening, I don't think, if you hadn't read at least a few of the other books. Like, there's enough viewpoint switching to characters you, like, already have to know stuff about. There's too many people. It's super charming if you've read them, but I wouldn't recommend it to someone who hasn't read the rest of the series. And that's mostly what I'm reading. Oh, should I leave Dress for the Weather to you, Chelsea? Because I also just finished rereading that yesterday, and I want to die. It's so great.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault you couldn't stay out of that.
It's like 220,000
I made the choice for
words.
me, and you have to be responsible for your choices.
Totally my fault.
You have to own your own choices, okay?
I do own my own choices.
Yeah. For those of you who haven't been following those particular like sub-tweet threads on Twitter, Dress for the Weather is like 190,000 word RPF hockey fanfiction that I started reading because I was just like browsing through my bookmarks on AO3, and I read the synopsis and I was like, okay, this sounds good. And I, like a dumbass, didn't check any of the pertinent information, like word count, before I just like started reading. And then I was like, 3 chapters into it, and I was like, man, this is like this shit's either gonna have to like escalate really quickly or this is gonna be like really long. And then I looked at the word count and I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, this is like basically like a 350 page book. So I was like, that's cool. And of course, I didn't like stop reading it, and it was fantastic. And I finished it at like 5 this morning and I loved it. But at the same time, I was just
so good.
Let that be a lesson to all of you kids. Check your word count before you go getting all emotionally invested.
I do have to ask.
Or be prepared.
Did you have trouble following along? Because this is my only RPF fandom, and I'm actually an in real life hockey fan. I was an in real life hockey fan before I got into hockey fandom, and I only even found hockey RPF fandom because a bunch of writers I follow suddenly dropped in a couple years ago, and they were writing about my favorite team mostly. Was it super hard for you to follow, Chelsea? You know nothing about hockey, right?
Not really. Yeah, that's the main thing is like, I don't know anything about hockey. There used to be a hockey team in Missouri, the Kansas City Blades, that we would go to when I was very, very small. Which lasted, about as long as you would expect a Midwestern hockey team to last.
It's hard.
Not long. But I just because I knew it was an AU fic, I guess I just chalked anything I didn't understand to being like, well, it's probably just something they made up, so it's fine.
Wait, that's the thing with AU? That's what you have to tell me to get me on board.
Yeah, it's an
Sidney Crosby, who was the second coming of Gretzky, okay? This is a real person who he is this modern savior of modern hockey, okay?
He's also very attractive. He's
a deeply weird dude, and he has had concussion problems in the past. So the premise of this fic is that he had bad enough concussion issues that he's I'm going to retire after one more season, and he basically rewires the entire NHL with his bare hands to start a franchise team in a projected future expansion, which this future expansion is a thing that's going to happen, though not necessarily these teams.
Yeah.
And it's an integrated team, so it's half women. So,
yeah, they're co-ed.
So his sister is the goalie
team
on the team, and he is the coach for the team. And it is the story of the first season of this new franchise. And it's this really in-depth ensemble-y, super slow burn of 2 different relationships. The slowest burn.
I don't know what it is, man, but 2 of the best slowest burn fictions I've read in the last probably 6 months have both been from hockey RPF fandom. I will say, did not like this one as much as I like. I just what do I know? Because I've been in this fandom for 2 seconds. Yeah. But Sid and Gino are just my babies, and I love them so much. And so
sure.
the whole time I was reading, I was like, this is lovely. But it's also not the other thing that I read that was just so good. And that's not the fiction's fault. No. That's completely me. But other than that, other than running through that crazy hockey RPF fan fiction, I have been reading a couple of things, mostly nonfiction. I'm reading one right now called Searching for Sunday, Loving, Leaving, and Finding the Church, which is by Rachel Held Evans. If either of you have heard of her or seen her floating around on Twitter, she's a very vocal proponent or supporter of the radicalization of the church in a much more democratic and liberal way. So she is frequently confronting, and the book confronts issues of like reconciling faith and science and reconciling faith and like sexuality and the parts of church that are like, you know, super kind of misogynistic and like also not the greatest in terms of like church history. And so she just talks about that and also how to still kind of cope with those things, or cope's not the right word, but kind of, you know, adapt to those things and reconcile those two things together, although they may seem very disparate at first. So it's very interesting. I find religion to be really fascinating, and the ways that people like express their religion and follow religions to be really fascinating. So I'm really enjoying it.
Question: would you recommend that for me, who is agnostic but was raised by
probably.
evangelical Christians?
I was going to say, I would recommend it for anybody who either finds religion to be really fascinating in terms of like sociology and society and just how churches operate in their communities, or anyone who, like myself, and it sounds like UK has been introduced to the ideas of religion and may have like been surrounded by that to varying degrees, but definitely has some like qualms and things that need to be kind of
me and my 18 relatives who are pastors
within the church
don't really see quite eye to eye, no.
Yeah, exactly. And like, granted, admitted, I was raised Methodist, but am usually a practicing Unitarian, so like, I'm about as liberal as you can get on like the religious spectrum for me. So like, my church is usually really cool with like ladies and gay people
like,
and like interracial families
female,
and
like pastors, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, all the time. We have female pastors, and there's a trans pastor at the Unitarian church that I go to. So like, it's very, very liberal. But Rachel Held Evans was actually raised as like, I think Lutheran or Baptist, one of the much more
I was like something Southern conservative,
Orthodox.
You said so many words that are like defining types of religion, and I'm like,
Yeah, sorry.
There are many disparate branches of like non-Catholic.
Yeah, like that's the thing is if you've even scratched the surface of Protestant denominational, like how it all works, it's just the most ridiculous fucking thing. It's just so crazy to me, which is one of the problems I have with like how structured religion works. I'm like, whatever. That's a whole different like
podcast
thing. Yeah, feel free to DM me on Twitter if you'd like to have more in-depth conversations about that. But I'm also reading, and I'm almost done with Roses and Rot by Kat Howard, which I'm really, really liking because it's really beautiful, but it's also about the Fae, and I'm just like...
Kat Howard's prose is super gorgeous, so even though that book was, like, not for me, I did like it. And the audiobook is really great, if anyone was interested in
I could see that.
Out.
That's another one I'm reading because I'm hoping or considering nominating it for the Hugos. So that's like a general theme underlying a large portion of what I'm reading.
Hugos, but I'm already nominating another one of her stories for one of the short categories, so I don't know. We'll see.
Ooh, which one?
The one that
which one are you recommending?
I can never remember the names of anything, but we have, I think it's the Green Knight, maybe? I'll link it. It's like a...
Yeah. No,
Merlin
it's
Arthur
that one, because that's on my list, too.
Real good.
That one, too.
By
that's
we, I mean
too.
Uncanny Magazine. For people who don't know, I'm a submissions editor there. Like, I actually, like, I published this. No, I'm a submissions editor for Uncanny Magazine, so I say we, but, like, the magazine did.
Which I feel like we say this at least once an episode, but if you're not giving your dollars to Uncanny, go check them out and do that. They're actually, I just read on Twitter, getting ready to start, I guess, like an activism 101 or like social engagement 101 kind of thing.
These unicorns fight fascists.
That plus,
where can I go give them my money some more?
Yeah,
Patreon.
I'm happy to give them all my dollars. Yep.
Yeah, I know they have a Patreon. I already give money to the Patreon.
I know. There's so many times I just want to be like, guys, Lynn, Michael, just take more money. Let me give you more money, please. Take all the dollars. All right, well, that seems like a good transition to, we are going to start talking about the book of the month, which is Not Your Sidekick by C.B. Lee. Yay. Like I said, this was Kay's pick. To do the real quick elevator pitch, it is essentially The Incredibles with a young adult bisexual half Chinese, half Vietnamese main character. And so Jessica is basically the youngest child or the middle child, actually, in a family of superheroes. Her older sister is a kind of superhero in training, and her younger brother is an evil genius. And so she's just kind of waiting for her powers to show up. And they never really do. And so she's coping with that. And she's also being in high school and coping with having friends and having crushes. Her main crush is named Abby and is, beautiful and is on the volleyball team and is just that kind of all-star woman on campus to fill her time because she's not kind of, finding any superhero powers. Jessica ends up getting an internship at a local tech industry for, as it turns out, the arch nemesis to her superhero parents, which is obviously going to cause some contradictions for her. So she starts this internship and things develop, and as she kind of becomes more aware of the world of superheroes, she realizes there be games afoot and there is some sketchy shit going on in terms of rewriting some of the histories and using the superheroes and their interactions to distract the general populace from some bigger political shit that's going on. So Jessica realizes this, and she realizes that she has to stop it. Lo and behold, through a couple of very unfortunate run-ins with her hero and an actual established superhero, Captain Orion, she realizes that the person that she's been working for, the masked arch nemesis villain that she's been spending all her time with after school, is also her crush Abby of volleyball captain team fame. And it's lovely and it's wonderful, and they have smoochy times and team up together to fight the big baddies. And I didn't realize it was the first in a series. I probably just should have assumed because it's a young adult novel. I probably should have just gone in assuming that. But it handles the kind of arc of the first book really well, I thought, while also setting up some kind of bigger dominoes. Claire's doing that like side wiggle thing with her head. So like we'll get there in a second.
Ratio of closed plot threads to hanging plot threads for me. But I know that's a fine line. And we'll get to the ending because I liked it with like a tiny caveat, but that is kind of the general premise of the book. We also meet her best friend, two of her best friends, one of whom is transgender. So this book does a really great job talking about sexuality and sexual orientation and race and how legacy and kind of family responsibility and all of those things play together while also just surviving high school, which, sometimes is great and sometimes is really not. So what did we think, ladies? Should we start with the positives, the stuff we like?
I mean, the stuff I liked was like literally 99% of it, right? Like there's one thing that annoyed me at the end.
Do it.
Because it felt like a junk.
Okay, yeah, then you know what? Fuck it. Let's just go there. Let's just start there. Because I agree, most of what I loved about this book was everything.
Like, I spent most of my time reading this book having to take little breaks to go...
Yeah.
So,
it's so good.
Like, I loved all of it. I just got slightly annoyed at the end because they explain away why one of the characters who kind of rebelled against his training as a superhero is able to just, like, keep going in his everyday life even though he pissed off, like, loads of really important people. And he's like, oh, well, he's like, the superheroes don't know who I am because my family is really paranoid, which was established earlier in the book, so that's all great. But, like, also, literally, one of the people who fought against him is his best friend's sister, who's known him since he was a kid. So, like, that, I was just looking at my Kindle and going, like, no, you're not safe because Claudia, who is, like, super evil and the worst, knows who you are and has been to your family's restaurants a bunch and knows, like, literally where you live.
Yeah.
Was that your thing too, Chelsea?
No, my thing was just, it was more of a pacing thing. Like, I thought it was balanced really well. I just felt like, and maybe, like I said, it's because I didn't realize until about, like, 3/4 of the way through that obviously there were going to be more books to, like, wrap stuff up, but I just felt like once they kind of had the interaction that they had with Captain Orion and they told the parents and they kind of brought everything together, there was literally one sentence where they were like, well, since we told the parents, they just decided that the adults would handle it. And then it was like 10 pages of high school life and boom, we were done. And I just felt like it was just kind of a little quick on the actual transition to the end part. But I mean, that's such a small thing that, like, nah. I mean, this book was great.
It felt like
I
the
really,
wrap
really liked
up
this
of a
book,
teen drama TV episode to me, which I kind of liked.
Yes.
Actually.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to read the second one. Like, it was obviously not a big enough turn off that I'm in any way not reading the next one.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely up for a second one. I have to say,
which is about Bells.
Like...
It's called Not Your Villain, and it's going to be about Bells. It's going to be so good. Bells is her transgendered friend who also ends up being one of the superheroes we learn throughout
He's a
the
shapeshifter
book.
like
So
Nimona. Well, he can't turn into animals, I don't think.
I don't think
No,
so, but
he
he
can't.
can. He's
I think
like
he can turn
he
into
can
people.
change his physical appearance, right? Like his whole that whole thing.
But see, the thing is, I think most of it was super well handled. I actually really like the fact that they didn't defeat everything in one book. I really like the fact that they had like a minor victory, and that there's a pause, and that there's gonna be some more stuff to battle in the second book, because obviously it's a really big deal, like a really giant worldwide conspiracy, and it will take more than like, you know, 2 teenage girls, even though they're awesome, or 3 teenagers.
No, yeah,
even.
it's gonna be a much bigger
Right, and
deal.
so that makes sense. It's great that we are going to have a second book. I felt like, even though it's quite realistic that the parents would be like, we're handling it now, it wasn't so much the pacing of the ending for me, it was just like the placement of that thing with Bells, who is the trans character, who also says like, my family's paranoid and I didn't tell them my real name, but also like one of the main like bad guy of the story like knows exactly who he is. And I felt like if we'd had him say that at the beginning of the next book and it could have been resolved in the same book, it would have worked a lot better. Like having that as a thing that wraps up the end, I'm gonna spend like however many months until the next book is released going like that makes no sense.
And it is this year. I haven't seen an official date except that it's this year at some point.
That it's this year.
I'm really
yeah.
excited for it. I definitely
I'm really
want
excited.
I definitely want to read it, and there's some more like romance shenanigans.
I thought it was interesting that for an identified bisexual character, she spent the entirety of the book being attracted to a female or only expressing attraction to a female. And I love her and Abby. So like, don't care, 1000% here for that ship. Ride or die. It better not fucking change by the time we get to the end of this book, because like, that just better not happen. But I just thought it was interesting after I finished it. I was like, well, yes, but interesting.
I read her as kind of demi also. So like I didn't think that was that weird. Like she's only going to be attracted to like one person at a time. I didn't think that was that weird. I was just picturing like a little baby bisexual Kay in high school getting to read this book and having like a bisexual heroine, and how great that would have been, because like there were no bi people in my media. I didn't.
Oh no, of course not.
And I didn't know
Not even
anyone
close.
else who was bi or anything to like college, because Idaho high school.
And it's so, and I know that, and it's a function of scarcity, because it just doesn't, but like, it's just so nice. They both like each other. There's a little bit of like
It's not
tension and
tragic.
drama just when they first start, but like, it's not tragic, and they're adorable, and they just both like each other and want to like be smooching and in love, and it's just so great. It's just, had I read this book at like 16, I would have carried it around and like shoved
Tattooed
it
it
into
on my
the
heart.
face of every person that I knew. I would have been like, take this book and read it. Not to mention, for somebody who is not a person of color, I thought it did a really good job integrating race and being mixed race and having discussions about that without in any way feeling forced or feeling awkward or feeling jammed in. And the descriptions of the Vietnamese food in this book were
I was so
fucking
hungry. I
delicious.
wanted a banh mi so bad.
I loved that Belle's family had a like jambalaya restaurant. Yes, please.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that the descriptions of the kind of various identities that Jess struggles with, because she's, she goes into this Vietnamese restaurant and there's like all the people and they're like, no, you're a child, you're clearly not like Vietnamese, that's not really a thing anymore. She tries to speak Vietnamese to some people and they're like, nah, you're like American, and they speak to her in English and that kind of thing. I mean, obviously as a white person it's difficult to say like, this is done great, whatever. It felt really, really like it felt really real, like really true to life, and it felt like it gave me so many feels. It felt very relatable, and like, it was integrated very seamlessly. I think the only thing that felt like not really realistic for me is like just how hammy and villainous Captain Orion was when she like stopped pretending to be really nice, like.
But I loved
liked
it. It's
that.
so good.
I mean,
it's so comic booky. Like, it's so.
It follows the tropes of the genre fabulously, and that's great. But the kind of like really, really like open racism that she has, where she's like, oh well, they couldn't be like your parents couldn't be like proper first class superheroes, obviously.
It made her
those
even more
people or whatever.
villainous.
No, I know it did. But I did think it was a little bit like hammy, like, of course she's also on top of that. I mean, obviously there's plenty of
it's a
people,
lot.
so it makes sense, right? But
It's like cranked to 11.
It felt very X-Men in the way that I actually enjoy, and not X-Men in the way that I hate, where like X-Men like mutant powers stand in for all these other things, like different races and like gender identities and sexualities. You actually get those in this. So it was like, I love that.
You know, it's that same problem with Harry Potter, where it's like you read it and you can see like a very nice white lady writing a book where she's like wanting to be super progressive, and she's writing
but she
this
doesn't
book,
want to just
but
call
she's
it what it
writing
is.
all of these issues. She's writing about all of these issues through, like, magical creatures that don't exist, even instead of writing about them through, like, people that are actually real.
Joanne, come speak with us. We have words for you. We have some words that we can share with you about how to do this
loving
better.
words.
Hit us up. You're definitely listening to the Sisterhood, so please just give us a call. So I think one of the things that I really enjoyed and was not surprised by, but was interesting that it was something they spent time talking about, was the fact that a large portion of the kind of villainous plot of this book is that there are some shady, like, transnational deals being made with one of the other countries that we're not at war with, but maybe are, and like it's very kind of suspicious. And the superheroes are basically actively using the general kind of obsession with superheroes and villains and how they interact to distract from these other things that are happening in a way that's super deliberate, and then they talk about
narrative out of alternative facts.
Out of alternative facts.
Fucking timely,
and like mindless
ladies.
entertainment, like literally being like, if people are too busy watching this choreographed, staged, pre-planned battle between quote good and evil, they won't be able to or have enough energy left to actually see what it is that's going on. Which, like, hi, welcome to my house of allegory.
Before the disaster. So, like, this takes place, like, after a solar flare and, like, a World War III. So this is, like, what, like, 150
And it's, like, that's
years
where
in
the
future?
superpowers come from.
And, like, that's where their powers come from.
Something like that.
They, like, point blank say that before all this happened, the news was really depressing, and we don't want it to be like that. And I'm just like, oh, God, this is too relevant right now.
And, like, do not misunderstand me. My entire, like, the first 3/4 of my Hulu feed is all different versions of The Real Housewives. So this is not said in disbursement, but, like, I can see that happening. Like, I make the choice to stay actively involved, and it takes extra energy, but like people who don't make that choice, I can very easily see how that could be a thing that, like, should we ever get actual genetic superheroes, will not be all that far off the mark. Like, it's a very interesting kind of representation of how people are both unwillingly and willingly, like, letting themselves be distracted.
And the media narrative they're crafting is not just present day, they're also retroactively, like, doing some revisionist history because they don't have paper textbooks anymore. So they're, like, retroactively turning some of the people who were heroes into villains now, which our heroine's super smart and figures out because she has a paper textbook.
Yeah.
Good girl.
Which, like, you know, it's not like there are actual, like, you know, people or institutions in real life working to actually change actual history textbooks to erase things like racism and sexism and some of the awful things that people throughout the globe have done.
I want to die. Oh, God.
Yeah, I can't. I was listening to Renee talk about it on the most recent Fangirl Happy Hour, and she was describing, like, her public school education in Arkansas, which mine was not that far off. Hers in Kansas City, and it just, like, crying, sad
or
tears.
Or like the
it's
Eli
just,
Whitney not being white thing that people were talking about recently. I'm just like,
oh my God. Oh God, you guys. Frederick Douglass is still doing such good work 142
He's getting
years later.
recognized more and more.
More and more. He's just all his good works. I can't. I have to laugh or I'm going to cry. I just, like... If you don't know what we're talking about, consider yourself like blessed. Oh goodness. Okay, well, does everyone have favorite parts? Do we want to do a quick little favorite
Yes.
parts
Yes.
thing?
Yes.
It sounds like really the main book theme from this is like definitely
We
read
fucking
it. It's
loved
just
this
great.
book.
Just read it. It's the best.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to talk about that stood out the most for me in this book was how openly discussed Belle's pronouns are all the time.
Yes,
always
that's what
really
I was going
great.
to talk about. I'm
She's
glad
like,
you're
I don't
talking
want to
about her.
accidentally
That's
That
misgender
is-
you, and like when she's talking to the
Right,
person
and
next
that's
to-
really something to me that felt like, I did a double take because I've never seen that in a piece of original fiction. I've seen it plenty in fan fiction and I've seen it plenty in real life. Like I've been sat next to people talking about someone else and being corrected about their pronouns. And you know what? Like it's not, it's a normal thing, right?
Yeah.
And to have it in there, it just made me think about all the other things that you don't see in books, like characters going to the loo.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my god, can it please not be on the same level as like bodily functions and like going to the bathroom? So I was really happy that it was in there and that it was addressed a couple times.
And I loved it because when I got to the very first conversation where she mentions Belle's and his pronouns, I had not realized up until that point in the narrative that Belle's was trans. And so I just thought it was a really subtle way to indicate that he was, because at least I missed out on any details before that first conversation.
The only thing you might have missed before that was she mentions, oh no, did you have your binder on all day? Did you need a break? I think that was the only thing before that.
And I must have just missed that. But it's there's not really any out loud like Belle's is trans and here are like it's just handled in a way that's very like the other identity conversations that are had, that's very seamless and just seems very like casual in a way that like we should all strive to handle. Like it should not be a weird thing to have these conversations. And for a lot of people it's not, which is awesome.
Right, and I think one of the things for me that like really, really made me love the handling of that in this book was towards the end, there is a moment where they're trying to infiltrate this like bunker prison-y type place where Abby's parents are being kept. And Belle's changes into Captain Orion, the like main lady superhero that everyone respects and loves. And so as Captain Orion, he can order people around and they can get in super easy. And there is a super quick blink and you miss it moment where Jess asks him if he's okay and doesn't say why she's asking. And he says, yeah, I'm fine. And, like, there's no explanation of why, right? You have to, like, at least for me, I read it. I was like, huh? I read it again. I was like, oh, yeah, because he's impersonating a woman and he has dysphoria.
Does he say he's fine? Or he's like, not really, but we have to do this anyway?
Yeah, I think it's very like he's not fine, but he acknowledges that like he's okay with the fact that it has to be done. So it's like
Yes, which I what a cis way of phrasing it. He's just fine. He makes the choice to do it anyway. So, I mean,
no, and I really like that, like,
but it's gonna have to happen basically.
Like we were talking about with the blatant racism from Captain Orion. I don't remember if it's Captain Orion or Claudia, but at one point they call Belle's by his birth name and not Belle's. They call him Elizabeth, whatever his birth name was, as a way to shame him and to embarrass him.
I think it was
and it's very clearly cast in a way that's meant to be villainous.
Because dead naming people is villainous.
Yeah, like it's a way of saying like you don't do
especially if you
that.
know, and if like this was your sister's best friend, you would know. I did not actually notice that because like for me it was like a super quick, I was reading it and going super quickly. And also there's a bit at the end where Captain Orion keeps messing up Claudia's name, where she's supposed to be Captain Orion's second in command, and that was the other bit where I was like,
I actually really like that because I hate Claudia. I think she's awful. So I was like, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Claudia is awful, but like I kept thinking about the scene in the musical of Les Mis where Thénardier is like, oh, darling Colette, and I was like, no.
Yeah, no.
Everything comes back to Les Mis.
Oh,
it does, Kay,
always
it does.
and forever. Always and forever. All right. Did you have anything that we haven't talked about yet, Kay, that you wanted to mention?
I do want to mention, like, I called literally every, like, scare quotes plot twist in this.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Fairly well ahead of time. I think she telegraphs things in a way that's almost more telegraphs them almost in a more middle grade than young adult fashion, which is fine because everything was super charming. I did not mind that stuff was telegraphed. I think that might be an issue for some people who read not a ton of YA. The other thing is, I was so excited by the point of view in this because you've probably heard me ranting about this before if you follow me on Twitter. I am not a big fan of first person point of view. And it's, like, basically all anyone writes in young adults now. And that drives me bananas. So this is written in third-person present tense, which is my absolute favorite both to read and write in. And I loved that. People should do that more.
And I will say, as a young adult librarian who reads a lot of young adult, this is first person is a very popular perspective to write in. And because of that, and because it fills the market, it can be hard to do that in a way that stands out from everybody else who's also doing that. So, it's always nice to see it mixed up like that and to get any form of, like, third person narration in a young adult book. A+. And yeah, I do, in terms of what you were talking about earlier, I do think it skews towards the younger end of young adult, or like the more advanced end of middle grade. I think it depends on, like, personal comfort of what you're, like, willing to kind of, like, expose your children to. Like we've talked about, there are no, like, kind of blatant or, like, complicated or in-depth conversations about a lot of these things, but they're very much so themes that are present. So if that's not something you feel that your middle grader is ready for, but in terms of, like, style and pacing and all of that, I think you could probably get away with recommending it to, like, the older end of middle grade.
As the person who was kind of grumbling last episode about how tropey the book was and certain things that, like, were super predictable or whatever, I'd like to say I agree with Kay. I called everything super early, and I don't know if it's because those are tropes that I'm more used for from fan. I don't know if it's because I'm more used to the specific tropes that this book was using because of fan fiction.
Especially, you read a lot of Marvel stuff, right? So, like, the identity.
Yeah, as I say, if you're big into the MCU,
is,
there's going to be a lot of that.
Right,
yeah.
I read a lot of superhero fanfic, so there were a lot of things that I found really interesting. I really like, things that go into, like, how does being a superhero work and all that. But I also think it's because, like, in When a Scott Ties the Knot, there were things that, like, made me angry in my feminist places, whereas in this one there was, like, literally nothing. And and I was also super happy that even though there's a bisexual main character, there wasn't a love triangle.
Hate those.
Because I just don't like love triangles anyway.
It was really nice, yeah. That's a really overplayed.
I always want to solve love triangles with polyamory. Like, I just don't understand why it's a problem.
Yeah, I don't get it. I just, every time I just want to be like, guys, you don't have to fight. Edward, Bella, Jacob, stop fighting and just all have sex with each other. It's so much better that way. I feel like Stephanie Meyer really missed the mark on that one.
Like, we're being
dismissive.
Like, obviously, polyamory is not for everyone, but, like, I just think it's a really tired trope. Like, no thanks.
But it's also, like we can just move on from that. I feel like that's a thing that has been done literally to death. Overwhelmingly so. But I just feel like, to me, it didn't, because in general consensus, nothing in this book was necessarily, like, a surprise to me. None of the big twists were, like, twists necessarily, but it felt campy, but, like, in a good way. Like, it felt like when you go to see, like, a classic horror movie and you're just like, well, obviously don't go into the basement alone. Like, hi, have we not learned this yet?
Way.
But, like,
and I say that as a comic
yes,
reader.
like, it was like reading, like, a novelization of a comic book. And so it's just like, and I think that C.B. Lee did that intentionally. I think that she was very much so looking to write kind of a blatant kind of playing with superheroes and the superhero genre and all of these kinds of things. So it's just like, that is a thing. If that's a thing in books that doesn't, like, really jive with you, that is a thing in this book. But I loved it.
I don't know. To me, it read like someone who loves the genre and like wants to poke fun at it
a loving
with
wink
a lot
and
of
nod.
fondness.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Sweet. All right. Well.
So, like, I'm not going to quote mine because it's just a scene. But Abby and Jess, they have a writing assignment that they do together for their English class.
I love that so much.
And they're
I love it so
basically
much.
like writing self-insert fic about themselves, and it's so cute.
It's so
cute. And I loved it a lot.
Oh man. And then my favorite part was probably, if Claire, are you talking about the part with how the pronouns were handled, those sections? Because those were also my favorite parts. That's what I enjoyed the most. I thought it was really, really nice to see a pleasant and normal conversation about how to properly refer to somebody.
And they weren't like being like confrontational or snappy, or they're just like, you know.
Yeah, and they were being like confrontational or condescending or like doing that like
them, but thank you for doing that instead of assuming, and like yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the part I have marked, the part that I really liked, because this is a conversation between Jess and Abby, and I think it's important because Jess is Belle's really good friend, and so she is used to referring to Belle's by his pronouns and being conscious of that in a way that the general public might not be. And so the whole scene goes, Belle's is great though. I love their hair. They always do those bright colors, and so often Jess corrects. Belle uses his pronouns. Oh, I didn't know. Abby takes a bite of her sandwich. It's okay. I think it's pretty cool you thought of using they when you didn't know for sure. Abby nods. No problem. Daryl always does the same workshop at the beginning of the year for everyone in Rainbow Allies, which Daryl and Rainbow Allies, that's a reference to a very small side character who is an out gay kid at school who has formed basically a gay straight alliance for everyone, and
which
has
seems to be
apparently
all gay
offers
dudes.
seminars. Which is
a
literally
thing.
just like him and his friends of all gay dudes, which like spoiler alert, my high school gay straight alliance was just me and my best friend and whatever guy he happened to be dating, like at the time that he was dating.
We definitely
it was
didn't have
great.
one at my high school. Everyone was Mormon, so it's not.
Oh yeah, there that goes.
We definitely
even just,
didn't
like-
have one at my high school because it was kind of like this very French thing of like
Whatever.
being very socially conservative while pretending that we're like the leftist most people on earth.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's very French.
I mean, like, I was like, oh, I know one gay person in high school. And when I was in high school, by the way, this is when, like, I watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer for the first time, and I was legitimately surprised about Willow and Tara when they,
yeah.
like, first came out. And I rewatched that recently, and I was like, whoa, baby
I mean, like,
Claire,
this
is
this
so
will
sad.
probably, like, this, talk about dating yourself, but I was in, like, late junior high, early high school when Dawson's Creek was prime on the air, and, like, the Toby gay relationship, and like Jack is a gay character throughout that whole show. I literally was like riveted to the WB 6 o'clock when it came on once a week. I was just like, oh my God, you guys, there's a gay person on TV on Dawson's Creek. And my mind just like exploded. It was so, which, you know, there's still a long way to go and a lot of work to do. But looking back even that far and seeing that there's at least way more representation now, like sometimes it's kind of nice just to say, well, at least it's better than X, Y, and Z. So
I'm really looking forward to doing the show notes for this episode and linking to Dawson's Creek.
yeah, it's gonna be so good. I'm so happy for you to do that. Let me know if you need like Uber Tumblr links, because I have so many of them from writing the episode recaps. It's
Let
so
me know
good.
if you want.
There is there's like a huge swath of the our age cohort, like recesses of the internet, that is full of Dawson's Creek gifs and slideshows and like photo sets on Tumblr.
I mean,
it
Pacey
is
is the best internet
fascinating
boyfriend,
and
so.
beautiful place to be.
I mean, I've literally never seen an
listen,
episode of
he did
Dawson's
not
Creek,
win the
so-
poll, and I just want to say, Twitter, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm just
Who won
throwing it
the
out there.
poll?
He didn't win our best boyfriends poll. Oz from Buffy.
Yes!
Oz is
That was
not a
Claire's
good
pick.
Boyfriend.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
He's
not.
an interesting
He's a good
character.
person.
He's not a good
He's not a good
boyfriend.
person. He's not a good boyfriend.
Oz is like a good high school boyfriend. He's not a good college boyfriend.
I'm just saying, Sean Hunter didn't get my vote because while I love him as a
say.
character, he's not a good boyfriend.
Not a good boyfriend.
Pacey Witter for life. Twitter, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with you. I'm just saying. Y'all let me down a little bit on that one. Just a little bit. But there are some excellent gift streams on that poll from people linking to gifts of their favorite 90s high school boyfriends.
Beautiful.
So definitely something to check out if you need a smile.
Do I need to link to my massive Twitter thread of just gifs of Corey and Sean now?
Always. That's always something you need to relink. You should probably just pin that whole thread to the top of your Twitter for life. All right. Well, because I refuse to let us fall down the OT3 Boy Meets World 90s pop culture rabbit hole, I'm going to talk about the next book we're reading. This was Claire's pick. We are reading Certain Dark Things by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, which if a lot of people read and loved Signal to Noise last year, which was a book about music and Mexico and magical realism. This is... Yes, I read it and loved it, so I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah, this was one of my favorites of 2016, and I don't really like magical realism normally, so, you know, I thought it would be a good idea to have a look at what Moreno Garcia does next, and it's about vampires, which, I don't know, I mean, I'm not, like, super into vampires, but I'm ready to be, you know, surprised or proven wrong, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that she kind of helped you like magical realism, because maybe that'll help me like vampire stuff. Like, vampires are usually not my jam. They are not my, like, mythical creature of choice. But this one takes place in Mexico City, and it's actually, like, a really cool spin on vampire folklore, because it's one of the vampire kind of races in this book is based on ancient Aztec vampire lore. So it plays with that, and there's a drug cartel, and the vampire is involved, and also, like, she meets this human companion who starts to fall in love with her, but she's, like, not having it because she's being pursued by drug clans.
Did you know that I haven't, like, read this book yet, because I don't have it in my house yet, right?
None of this is, like, spoilers. None of this is spoilers. This is literally all, like, in the Goodreads. Okay. Like, all of this is in the Goodreads stuff. I'm not spoiling anything. No. But yeah, so essentially, you know, we are kind of following this human as he gets wrapped up with this vampire, and then we learn, of course, her backstory and why she's kind of involved in this drug war / vampire clan battle. And not a spoiler, but I have started reading it, and it is gritty. It is not grim dark, but, like, Sylvia is not fucking around with her vampires. Like, these bitches do not glitter. There are some throats getting ripped out. Like, these vampires are, like, they come legit. So
Kay is making a really distressed face
That's
right
great.
now, just so you all know.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kay.
It's not too bad. There's not a lot of gore in it, but I'm just saying, like, her vampires are, like, they are vampires. They are gonna... Good. There is some blood involved.
See, I'm a weird person who I can watch the goriest things and it doesn't bother me at all, but my imagination's super vivid, and when I read that stuff, it's
will say, I'm not gonna spoil anything. There is one scene in a vet lab that involves eye stuff. So when you get there, if eye stuff is a thing for you, just general spoiler warning.
Yeah, she's not too much into body horror. I think you had trouble with,
I had to stop reading Six of Crows because of an eye thing.
That's really the only scene where it's that bad. And I just know that we have a couple people I know for a fact who listen who have, like, stuff with eyes especially. Yeah. So I'm just, like, giving a heads
Waving my hand. Send me links to what chapter that is.
Yeah, I will. I will.
Okay,
I will
sorry.
put some, if you want, like, if that's a thing for you and you want, like, actual details, please DM me. I am not afraid to, like, let you know what page it's on, or, like, just spoil it for you outright so you can avoid it. Obviously, I don't need anybody getting triggered for their squick or anything, but just a heads up, that's really, like, a thing. But I'm really excited. I'm really excited to talk about this one because I think it does some really cool stuff with, like, Mexican culture and vampire lore and like, current problem stuff. So yeah, it's great.
Yes, her prose is beautiful.
Yeah, she can spin a sentence, man. Let me fucking tell you.
I can ignore a lot of shit. All right, so what's prose.
Then? That's very true. That's very true. I can get through a lot of stuff if you write a pretty sentence. All right, so we're going to officially transition to talk about what we have coming up next. I want to start out as kind of general guideposter for completely skipping Claire in our last episode, talking about her future projects. We all just got distracted and we wrapped things up before we actually made it back to Claire. So Claire, top of the hour, what do you have coming up in the future?
So at the moment, I'm trying to read up some stuff that is eligible for the Hugo Awards this year. Nomination period is open from now until this 17th of March, I think. So by the time this podcast comes out, there should be a couple of weeks left. And I'm just trying to read stuff that I wanted to read when it came out and then didn't get to. So I have a super long list. I did a blog post about this. I'm someone who gets really easily, like, nervous by reading lists, but mostly it's like if I plan to read a specific number of things and then I can't get to everything. So I just made the longest list in the world, and I printed it out, and I'm like marking it with a marker when I'm done with a thing so that I have a visual representation of progress. And I know I'm not gonna get to everything because I have literally an entire page of short story titles, right? So it makes me happy. I can see a visual representation of getting a bit of shit done and get more a larger pool of stuff to nominate from. So that's part of what I'm doing now.
What do you have coming up, Miss K?
So, as per usual, still going on the Trek Wreck a Day project. We will see.
I'm so proud of
We
you
will
for
see if I can
continuing to
keep
do
this
that.
going until the new show comes out. It's like 170 something at this point. Again, that's just, I've got it in a Twitter moment. It's really easy to find. We'll link that. And I should have a couple new Book Riot pieces up. The one that I'm fairly sure should be up by the time this goes live is, if you read Book Riot, you might have read the literary tourism posts before, which is like they'll have like a
are you
town
doing
or
one
a
for
place.
AZ?
I'm doing Idaho, which if you don't know, my parents are both from
Nice.
Idaho. I have a lot of relatives who still live there. I lived there in high school. And I'm doing like the whole state. If you didn't know Marilyn Robinson, she's from Sandpoint, Idaho.
Love her.
Which is also where
Queen.
Viggo Mortensen sometimes lives, and he is a poet. And that's also in the same town where I like learned to ski. And then you've got
Viggo
the
Mortensen
Hemingway
is a
House.
poet?
Skiing and Viggo Mortensen, done.
And the Hemingway House in Sun Valley that you can go to, and there's like this beautiful like outdoor Shakespeare festival in Boise. It's an outdoor amphitheater, and it's amazing. Anyway, so I should have that literary tourism post up on Book Riot. We'll be sure to link that, and that's about it.
Wonderful. All right, and then I will just be churning out the content on the YouTube channel as per usual. By the time this goes out, the next Sexy in 17 reads should be up. We are reading Gentleman in the Street by Alicia Ray. I'm really excited. I had some mixed feelings about Promise of Fire, which was our first pick, so I'm really looking forward to this one.
Gentleman in the Streets is the one about the plus-size politician's daughter who owns a sex club, right?
Yeah, it is.
I'm so on board for this.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited. It's going to be a good one. And then also, by the time this goes up, my series of episode reviews for Yuri on Ice should have started publishing on Snark Squad, so we will link to those. I am doing
So excited.
episode by episode recap / breakdowns. I've already done the first like half a dozen. So many gifs and so many like naked pictures of Victor, and like I don't even know what work must think of me and my Google image search history right now. It's pretty insane. But those should all be up, and of course will be linked in the show notes. Please join us in a couple of weeks for talking about Certain Dark Things by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Until next time, I guess bye guys.
Bye.
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 You've been listening to Sisterhood of the Traveling Paperbacks, a podcast made by 3 online besties and all-around lady nerds. Channel art provided by Claire Russo. Music credits to Malt Shop Bop by Kevin MacLeod. You can get in touch with the Sisterhood at paperbackssisterhoodpodcast@gmail.com, at paperbackspod on Twitter, or at our website paperbacksisters.wordpress.com. You can reach Kay at @KTaylorRay on Twitter, Claire at @Claire Russo, and Chelsea at @An Outlaw Life. Additional credits, show notes, and transcripts will be available on our website. Thank you so much for listening.
No paperbacks were harmed in the making of this program.
Third time's a charm, ladies. We're so fucking profesh. We got this.